Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, TRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this role-playing game based on the popular isekai'd series, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about damage, character conditions such as death, debuffs, and many other things. Let's start with physical damage. Typically, damage dealt by weapons is physical damage. When dealing physical damage, you roll 2 6-sided dice, then add your weapon's attack power and any other modifiers, from things like skills to that number to calculate the damage. The defender subtracts their physical defense. The resulting value is the total damage dealt. If this value is 0 or less, the defender takes no damage. The defender subtracts the total damage dealt from their HP, then writes their new HP into the current HP section of their character record sheet. When it comes to magic damage is just that, damage dealt from magical effects. The defender calculates magic damage differently than physical damage. The defender subtracts their magic defense and any other modifiers from the attacker's damage. The resulting value is the total damage dealt, which is subtracted from the defender's HP. If the total damage dealt is 0 or less, the defender takes no damage. The defender subtracts the total damage dealt from their HP, then writes their new HP into the current HP section of their record sheet. In addition, magic damage will sometimes have an element associated with it. These elements include fire, water, wind, earth, lightning, ice, light, and darkness, as well as non-elemental damage, for 9 varieties in all. For convenience's sake, non-elemental magic damage is referred to as void. Should the defender possess an elemental attribute, their magic defense may change when struck by a magic attack of a certain element. If a character has an elemental attribute, it means they are resistant to that element. Thus, when taking magic damage from the same element, they double their magic defense when calculating total damage dealt. Some skills, items, etc. describe a weakness to an element or an elemental weakness. When a character receives magic damage of an element, they have a weakness too. Treat their magic defense as 0 when calculating total damage dealt. In addition, magic damage that doesn't have any elemental attributes is listed as void. However, this is purely a term for convenience, and no such void element exists. When you're allowed to choose an element for a skill, you may not choose void. When it comes to piercing damage, as the name implies, this is damage that ignores defense. Thus, piercing damage cannot be reduced by physical defense or magic defense. Additionally, because it is neither physical damage nor magic damage, any skills or items that would reduce one or the other have no effect on this type of damage. However, if a skill or item simply says that it reduces damage without specifying physical or magic, it will reduce piercing damage. Now let's talk about protect. Just before the damage roll step, a character in the same engagement as a character who landed their attack may choose to take the attack in place of the one it landed on. This is called protecting. All debuffs, skills, and item effects that will be applied to the target along with the damage are transferred to the protecting character. In addition, a character protecting another cannot use any skills or items with the timing of before damage roll. For a character to perform protection, they must be in a ready state. Immediately after performing protection, that character becomes spent. No other characters may protect a character already protecting another. Mob enemies cannot perform protection. We will talk about mob enemies in a future part of this review. If an attack, such as those with target area, would strike both the character performing protection and the target of that protection, the character performing protection receives double damage. If the protecting character passes their normal dodge check, then calculate damage like a normal protection is being performed. Let's talk about damage and recovery. When taking damage or receiving the effects of skills, a character's HP may decrease, or they may be afflicted with a debuff. However, decreases in HP are not the same thing as being wounded. HP doesn't only indicate the vitality in a character's physical body, but also their level of exhaustion and the state of their physical health. Thus, a character's HP going to 0 doesn't mean that a character immediately dies. A character whose HP falls to 0 becomes knocked out. A character who is knocked out cannot use any skills or perform actions of any kind until they recover from being knocked out. They also may not recover HP through skills or items. They may not take a move action, major action or minor action, and they can't react or take any free actions either. If they are the reactor to an opposition check, use 0 for their total check score. However, even knocked out, any continuous skill effects they possess will remain, as will any debuffs. If for some reason a character is knocked out without their HP going to 0, their HP automatically becomes 0. Let's talk about the death check. Now, one of my viewers, Miguel Angel, told me that someone in Reddit discovered that there is an error here. Let me read the apparently incorrect version. At the end of every combat round, all knocked out characters must perform a death check. A death check is an action check with the luck stat. Its difficulty level is determined by their current HP, as indicated in a table. If they pass the death check, they are no longer knocked out, and their HP becomes 1. If they fail the death check, that character dies. The Game Master may also decide that characters can only recover from being knocked out via skills or items. Now, the correct version, according to this Reddit post, indicates that characters should only perform their death saves at the end of a combat, not at the end of each combat round, and then you see if the character survives or gets up. But I think you could handle it either way. But if you are handling it in the incorrect way, that means that every round there is a chance for you to get up or to die. So I recommend that you handle it the other way, because it's going to look too ridiculous, even for Konosuba, for the character to keep getting up after being taken down multiple times. Now, when it comes to death, if a character dies, they are removed from the game during afterplay. Now, let's talk about healing HP and recovering from knocked out. HP can be restored in many ways, such as with skills or items. However, a character who has been knocked out cannot recover any HP. In addition, in general, a character cannot recover from death. When it comes to the loss of HP and MP, attacks decrease their target's HP with damage. But there are other ways to lose HP. This is called HP loss. HP loss is not considered damage, thus even skills or items that would decrease damage cannot be used to decrease HP loss. Things that decrease MP in the same way are called MP loss. When it comes to debuffs, characters will sometimes be afflicted with disadvantageous debuffs from things like skills or items. There are 7 types of debuffs listed in a table, and it's possible to have more than one at once. However, if a character would be inflicted with more than one instance of the same debuff, the new one is not applied on top of the old one. Debuffs don't stack. Now let me read some of these debuffs to you. You have Intimidated. Intimidated is a state in which a character is under pressure, shrinking away from something. Intimidated characters cannot take a major action. To recover from intimidation, you need to carry out a minor action. There's also Stunned. Stunned is a state in which a character has temporarily lost consciousness. A stunned character takes -1d6 on any reaction checks. To recover from stun, it automatically heals during the initiative process, when the stunned character becomes the initiative character. You also have Poisoned. This is a state in which a toxin or curse has taken hold of a character's body and is slowly sapping their stamina. Different poisons have different levels of effectiveness. If it has an effectiveness of 1, it's written as poison with 1 inside of a parenthesis. Poisoned characters suffer 5 HP loss every cleanup process for each level of effectiveness. Each time the effectiveness increases by 1, 5 more points are added to the HP loss. Recovering from poison requires the usage of a skill, item, etc. that can heal it. There are plenty of debuffs such as Enraged, you also have Knockback, Dazed and such. Thank you for watching this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about the blessing rules, other rules and character growth. I like the different types of damage, the debuffs, the way that your character can actually get up after a fight. It really feels a bit like a JRPG, almost like a video game role-playing game, which is quite appropriate for the sort of world that Konosuba represents. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.